Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Are you ready to be entertained? Betty, Kathy, choir, your audience is ready to be entertained. Are you ready to do the entertaining?
Yes, we are.
I don't think so. You're not fully costumed.
We are.
Ah, that's better. Now you're ready. Betty, Kathy, choir, at your cue, you're on. We're very glad you're here for this lighthearted history of what we, the Good Samaritan Society, is all about, including how we got started.
Okay. That's enough of an introduction. Let's get started. It's 1885, and by gum, at least that's what my son said.
You're right. In 1885, an important year, because that's when the founder of our society, the Reverend August John Hager, was born. Of course, he wasn't a reverend back then.
No, he wasn't. That didn't happen until 1908, when August graduated from the seminary. But let the man speak for himself. And here he is.
Here I am, August John Hager. I'm 23 years old, single, a seminary graduate, and ready to go.
Just how ready are you?
I'm super ready. Send me where nobody else wants to go. Please, send me.
Well, how about Central North Dakota? Ever been to Central North Dakota? There's hardly any grass there, and you can barely find a single tree. But they do have some slightly rolling hills. Oh, and most importantly, there's a parish in barren Central North Dakota that needs a pastor.
I'll go. Don't send anyone else. Please send me.
And so he went. The seminary professors and the call committee took August at his word. They sent him to Arthur, North Dakota. Eventually, Arthur, North Dakota became the cornerstone of evangelical Lutheran Good Samaritan Society. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yes, you are. We just can't trust you. That didn't happen until many, many years later.
And eventually, and I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to the audience.
That's enough bickering. This is a happy occasion, and I want to talk with some of my new parishioners.
I'm in your parish, and I would love to talk with you.
Good. I want to learn all about the people here, what they are like, what they do, where they come from, and what they need. Just tell me everything.
We have many young people in our parish, but we have many elderly also. Some came here from Europe seeking a new and better life.
And that is me. I am also a parishioner, but I was not born here. I was born in Russia. Life was very hard there. In all my years there, I only saw one good thing in Russia.
You never told me anything good about Russia. What did you see that was so good?
My uncle. He was a very good man. He had a place that took care of deaf mutes. It was an institution, but it was very good. They did many good things.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you told us about your uncle. He is an example of good things that you can do right in your very own area. You don't have to travel to another country. You can find good things that need to be done right where you live.
And so it began. August started building a home for children who were deaf, mute, disabled, or simply unwanted. But that certainly didn't solve all of the problems.
We are helping these little ones who are in great need, but youngsters are not the only ones who need help. Everyone wants and needs a home.
We all can share, for even with our differences, our hearts are much the same, and where our love is, we'll come together there. Wherever there is laughter ringing, someone smiling, someone dreaming, we can live together there. Love will be our home. Wherever there are children singing, where a tender heart is beating, we can live together there. Love will be our home. Love will be our home. Love will be our home. Wherever there is laughter ringing, someone smiling, someone dreaming, we can live together there. Love will be our home. Wherever there are children singing, where a tender heart is beating, we can live together there. Love will be our home. Love will be our home. Love will be our home. Wherever there is laughter ringing, someone smiling, someone
man, but I don't need these crutches. I don't have a limp. There's nothing wrong with my leg. I am homeless and I need a home. So this is just a disguise.
Okay, so you're old and poor and need a home, but why the disguise?
I heard about the good things your church was doing in Arthur, North Dakota, how you're helping those needy children. So I thought if I got off the train here in Arthur, North Dakota, looking old and crippled, that you would help me. I have no home. I have nowhere to go.
Well, that was a mighty convincing limp you had there, friend. You had me fooled for a couple of days, but then I caught you walking without those crutches and without a limp.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just so desperate. Please forgive me. I'll leave.
Oh no, you won't leave. Don't worry, old friend. You're forgiven. God has helped me to see that what you really need is a place to live and a family who will care for you.
Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
Welcome home.
In Christ there is no resource, in no south or north, but one great fellowship of love throughout the whole wide earth. In Him shall true hearts everywhere their high communion find. His service is the golden cord, yours finding all mankind. Join hands and children of the faith, whatever your race may be. Who serves my Father as a child is surely kin to me.
1922. By golly, that was a very good year. It was the year the Good Samaritan Society was born.
I like to think that the whole idea of a Good Samaritan Society started with God. He wanted people to have Christian care. I like to think that God made me want to form a helping institution that could provide that care.
It was very natural for August to think in terms of establishing an institution. Just listen to what his mother has to say about that.
Hello, folks. I'm Augie's mother. I'm here to tell you a little bit about him. Our little Augie was practically born in an institution. His daddy and I worked in institutions all our lives. We were the house father and the house mother at the Lutheran Warburg Seminary in Mendola. That's in Illinois, don't you know? Well, Augie grew up in institutions, and he was always hearing about institutions.
Mother, you are right. Because of what I learned from you and Dad, it was very natural for me to think about starting an institution. But Mother, I believe that the blessing that God gave Good Samaritan was really a reward for the good you and Dad accomplished. One sows, the other reaps. I consider my work as reaping.
Did you hear that? Well, I never. Augie considers his work was reaping. His dad and I, that was our work, reaping. Well, as I said earlier, Augie longed to get into institutional work. That was what he wanted.
Mother, you must remember that vacancy that came up in an orphan's home. I really, really wanted that job, but I wasn't even considered for that job.
You had to learn patience, Augie. It was not the right time or the right job for him. Something else had to transpire.
And that something else was a fellow minister, the Reverend Worth. Ah, there he is now.
Hello, I'm Reverend Worth. It's nice to see all of you here today. Are you wondering how I fit into this story? Well, I do, and I'll tell you how. I knew Reverend August, and I knew him very well. He and I belonged to the same conference in North Dakota. And one day, I visited him when he was a parish pastor, and I told him about a boy in our congregation who was named Christian. And Christian had polio, and I wanted to help him.
Polio? Oh, that is terrible. How could you help him? How could a minister from a small working class parish, how could you do anything?
Well, I knew of some doctors in Missouri who specialized in treating polio. But how could we manage getting Christian to Missouri?
So what'd you do? Tell us. Were you able to do anything for poor Christian?
I didn't know what to do really, but I did decide that I needed some help. I needed help from as many folks as I could possibly reach.
How'd you do that? Tell us, please.
Well, I started by putting an ad in the newspaper. And the ad told about Christian. And then it said, if everyone would just give 2 pennies, that would be more than enough money to send Christian to Missouri for treatment.
People responded beautifully. They thought, if 2 cents is all they need, I can do that. I'll send it in today.
The money came in so fast. More than enough was donated. In fact, in the next issue of that newspaper, the Reverend Worth asked people to stop contributing.
Well, we were $2,000 over our budget, over our goal. But Reverend August had a plan for that overage. He wanted to use that extra money to help other people with disabilities.
I had a suggestion. I wanted to send a letter to all the ministers in our area, and I suggested that we ask them if they needed help with the disabled children in their congregations.
Of course they needed help. We not only received letters from the ministers, but also from parents. We got many letters from parents. They also responded.
Parents of special children really needed help. Many were desperately worried about what would happen to their children when they were orphaned.
Every set of parents had the same questions. Who will take care of our children when we are gone? Will our child be sent to a state institution? Doesn't the church have a home for them?
Well, with responses like those, we realized that more than anything else, we needed a home to care for disabled youngsters. So we wrote several institutions that already existed and asked them to enlarge their work.
Typically, they all answered something like this. I'm sorry, I've received your letter and must answer that we have our hands full taking care of those we already have. We aren't able to enlarge the scope of our work right now. It's just not possible. Why don't you, if you can see your way clear, undertake this project yourselves?
Those letters convinced August he would form an institution and use that $2,000 to help the disabled. To that end, the Evangelical Lutheran Good Samaritan Society was incorporated under the laws of the state of North Dakota. That was September 29th, 1922.
You're getting a little ahead of yourself again. Didn't happen that quickly. Was not an overnight project. It took many friends to organize and establish an institution.
We had a ton of discussions. We had to decide just what we wanted our society to be.
And we did decide the Good Samaritan Society would be a religious, charitable, and not-for-profit organization.
Amen.
But first and foremost, it had to be a Christian organization.
Yes.
Christian organization, that was of primary importance. We wanted an institution that was small, but broad, so any work of charity, any school, any kind of Christian work could be included.
Augie, tell them how you wanted people cared
Oh,
for.
mother, they know.
Augie, it can't hurt to remind them. Now do as your mother says.
Yes, ma'am. We wanted to take care of the whole person, body and soul. The body is important, and we should take the best care of it as possible. But if that is all we do, we will fall short of our God-given duty.
And so it began in March of 1923. The Good Samaritan home in Arthur was opened. It was a small house that was soon filled to capacity.
Every morning, every evening, ain't we got fun? Not much money, oh, but honey, ain't we got fun? No ransom paid, dear, we have not lost. What smiles are made, dear, for people like us. In the winter, in the summer, don't we have fun? Times are bum and getting bummer, still we have fun. There's nothing sure, the rich get rich and the poor get children. In the meantime, in between time, ain't we got fun?
Our first little house in Arthur, North Dakota, got filled very quickly. So we rented a second home. But that also filled quickly. And many people were still knocking on our door.
Oh my, so many folks needed your help. What did you do, Augie?
Well, we purchased 40 acres of land and built a home.
They wanted a fireproof building. So that home was built of cement. Its walls were solid cement sunk into the ground for about 2 feet. The roof was also built of cement. I told them to add lime to the cement to make it waterproof. However, they did not do it.
So, what happened?
Well, cement will not hold water. So, when it rained, the water came through the walls like they were a sieve.
Oh,
Well, there was no choice but to wait until springtime and build a second story. And this time was built of tile and brick.
2 years went by. Then a home for crippled children was built and 20 acres of land were purchased. A couple of years after that, more land was added and a huge dairy barn was built.
Let me tell you about the children we cared for. Those dear little ones were all mentally challenged, but they were individuals. Not two of them were alike. Some were very active, and we had to keep them busy. Others would just stand in one place like they were nailed to the spot. Getting them involved was always a challenge. Some were so talkative that you could think their jaws would need oiling. And of course, others barely spoke.
What did you do? Were you able to help those children?
Well, every child needs individual care, and only by studying each child and developing the gift he or she possesses can much progress be made. It didn't take us long to realize that in every child there is a certain thing that he or she loves to do
Exactly.
and can do better than anyone else.
Tell them about Kenneth.
Oh dear Kenneth. He taught us a lot.
He taught you?
Oh yes. And here's what happened. We first tried to have Kenneth work in the garden. We tried to get him to dig potatoes, but within 5 minutes he was through doing that and looking for some excuse not to do it. Then one day we noticed that Kenneth got a hold of a hammer, a saw, some nails, some old boards. Well, that kept him busy for hours and hours.
One day, we took Kenneth with us on a ride into town in our Ford. He watched how we started and stopped the car, and then he asked if he could run it. To our great surprise, he could run that car without any lessons at all.
That taught us that Kenneth should work with machinery.
That is good work. You certainly accomplished a lot.
Well, none of that would have been possible without our workers. Our workers are the backbone of Good Samaritan Society. We have Christian workers, and we could not run a Christian home without them.
There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place, and I know that it's the Spirit of the Lord.
August and the Good Samaritan Society enjoyed much success. But times were not always good and projects were not always successful. During the Great Depression, money became scarce. Things got shaky and supporters pulled away.
We were organized to do good, so we trusted God for our support. I told our people that if God fails us, we will fail. But as long as we let God and charity rule in our society, we will never really fail. When money becomes the ruling power, we will fall like the banks and other money institutions.
August was so sure that everything would work out that he wasn't prepared for the complete break that occurred between his two organizations, the Evangelical Lutheran Good Samaritan Society and the Lutheran Hospital and Homes Society.
During those days, I just kept to myself in my office for 3 long days and nights. I did nothing but search my soul and offer prayer. And then I got a very encouraging letter from my daughter, Agnes.
Here's what my granddaughter wrote to her dad. Personally, Dad, I feel that God has much greater work for you in store, and that this terrible crisis will prove to be a great blessing. It seems to me that he is showing you that his kingdom is not built on outward things, but on inward things. And although your best friends can stop you from building the kingdom of God outwardly, they cannot stop you from building his kingdom in the hearts of human beings. Dad, you will not get bitter, will you? Your loving daughter, Agnes.
Like the phoenix, the Good Samaritan Society rose again. 1945 was a very good year. The financial situation in Arthur, North Dakota was greatly improved.
With renewed hope and courage, the Society's newspaper, The Sunshine, printed this headline: "Still going ahead."
But now we had new problems. More and more people were coming to us for help, especially the elderly. So we traveled to Lakota to search for yet another large home.
Well, in Lakota, August and his party met the local minister. That minister introduced them to Mrs. Grona, the widow of the late Senator Grona. She had a lovely home that she wanted converted into a home for the aged in honor of her late husband.
Mrs. Grona was a godsend. She sold us that home very reasonably and on our terms. When it opened, that home had a budget of only $85. But at that point, we had only one resident. So we bought 3 cups, 3 saucers, 3 plates, 3 knives, 3 forks, and 3 spoons. And we continued to buy only as much as we needed for one person at a time as the residents were admitted.
That home, as well as our others, were and are more or less self-supporting. But the main thing about our homes is the Christian spirit that must dwell there. Not only should they have devotions and Sunday services, but those who work there should love the elderly. They should sympathize with them and have lots of patience in caring for them.
Amen.
In January 1963, Pastor August Harder was 78 years old and ready to retire. He asked the board to begin looking for someone to replace him and to take over the Good Samaritan Society.
5 years later, my wife, Amelia, and I moved to Good Samaritan Community administered by our son, John.
And then suddenly, in October 1970, without warning, pain, or illness, August died. Thus ended the life of an ordinary man with more than ordinary gifts and an intense desire to do the will of the Lord.
Nothing is impossible as long as the Lord guides and directs. You just say to the Lord, send me where you want me to go, and I'll be what you want me to be.
In 1952, the Good Samaritan Society had 32 centers in 7 states. Today, we have 240 centers in 24 states. They are bright, shiny communities for 28,000 residents. And guess what? We're still growing. And our home, Lake Forest Village, is one of Good Samaritan's brightest and shiniest.